have that much time left to do it in, so we'll jump right into it. Where we left off was the b'dikat chametz. We talked about that you have to do b'dikat chametz. You have to go search for the chametz the night before, 24 hours before the seder, 24 hours before you do the Pesach seder. You're gonna have to go do b'dikat chametz, search for the chametz. That's gonna be done specifically at night. It should be done at night, the night of the 14th, which this year I think it's going to be March 31st at night, and then April 1st is going to be the day before Pesach, and then April 1st at night is going to be Pesach. So that should be done. That means you have to check all the nooks and crannies. We should generally do it. The ideal way to do it is with a wax candle. You would go ahead and search the house at night with a wax candle. Of course, if you don't have to turn off the lights, you can keep all the lights on. Just we want to make sure that you're using a wax candle. You should not use a torch. Meaning, when we're saying a torch versus a candle has one wick, and a torch has more than one wick. So you want to make sure that you're using something that only has one wick. If you use something that has more than one wick, then you haven't correctly done the search, and you should do the search again, this time with a regular candle, with a one-wicked candle, and you should not repeat the blessing though. So again, we mentioned last time that you should say the blessing of al-bi'ul chametz, on the destruction of the chametz, even though we're not going to be destroying the chametz until the next day. Nonetheless, this is the beginning process of that, and therefore, we make the blessing of al-bi'ul chametz, on the destruction of the chametz. If someone forgot or someone doesn't have a candle, and now they have to go ahead and they have to go ahead and do the search, you have to make sure that you're doing the search with some method of seeing those nooks and crannies. And so the ideal method, again, we said, is through a wax candle. But if someone does not have a wax candle and they only have a torch, better not to do it with the torch. Rather, use a flashlight. So you should go ahead and use a flashlight, either like a phone flashlight or a pocket flashlight. That way you can best see all of those nooks and crannies. The reason we don't want to use a torch is there's two reasons. One, they say that the light itself isn't so good. And two, is that someone might be afraid that they might burn their house down. They might burn the curtains, or they might burn something. So best not to use a torch. Use a flashlight instead if you don't have a candle. But the ideal way to do it would be with a candle. Now, when we're saying a wax candle, you want to use a regular wax candle. You shouldn't use any oils or fats. We're worried that those are going to be, again, not the best light, and it might be hard also to carry that around the house. So best thing to do is a wax candle. Again, if you don't, make sure that you at least use some kind of a light, for example, a flashlight. That would be the next best. Okay? So the mitzvah of searching the house, it includes all of the nooks and crannies, anywhere that chametz could have been, means porches, balconies, stairwells, kitchen cabinets, anywhere that there possibly could have been chametz. You want to make sure you go ahead and check that out, and you want to make sure that that they are clean of chametz, even if you know that you never eat there, but you have little children, and the little children might take those pieces of bread and eat it over there, or even pieces of whatever, pasta or whatever. You want to make sure that you're checking those places as well. And even though it can become tedious, right? Even maybe if you have a big house, you have to go now and check all of those rooms. Nonetheless, it's a mitzvah, and we should know that we should remain cheerful. And then Parkei Avot, it says lefum tza'ara agra, that according to the pain is the reward. So if it's a little harder, that means don't worry, you're going to get even more reward. And so that should make a person feel a little better. Don't be agitated. As we mentioned on Tuesday, don't get mad. All right, don't want to get angry. Even though it's not Shabbat, it's still not good to get angry. You should. It's not necessary to inspect all of your clothes and pockets. Usually, if you put them in the washing machine, that's good. It's good to go. you can, again, like we mentioned earlier, you don't have to close the electric lights in the room when you're going ahead and doing the search. You can leave them on. You just want to make sure you're taking that candle or you're taking that flashlight and you're checking all of the corners, all of those nooks to make sure that they are free of chametz. When we're saying that you have to search all of your property, all of the balcony, whatever, the porch and everything, and also one's automobile. Right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people that they have a lot of chametz in their automobile, sometimes more so than in their house. So you want to make sure that you're checking your automobile, and if you have to make sure you get it washed beforehand, and then again you would still have to do a check. Again, remember, all of this is after you. Technically, this is the last stage in the process. The b'dikat chametz is the last stage, meaning ideally, actually not even ideally, you should have the whole house cleaned. You should have the whole house cleaned by now, by the night before Pesach. There should be minimal amounts of chametz in your house, minimal amounts of leavened bread in your house. And so at that point, you should make sure that the whatever is chametz is kept contained, and it's not going everywhere. And you want to make sure it's out of any small kid's hands, at least inside the house. If you want to give it to him, make sure that you give it to him outside or her to outside. That way, they say, I don't know where it went, and then if you don't know where it went, you have to do another search now, and so you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that you're doing the b'dika, you're doing the search. All of your property, all of your properties, right? Your automobile, anything that you could possibly go to. If it's like a rental property and there's non-Jewish people that don't keep, then you don't have to worry about that. It's only places that you would that you own and that you are right now residing in. So a car is included in that. And so a car, you want to make sure that you are doing the b'dikat chametz there. We're going to talk about going checking in advance. So hold that question. Someone asked, what about if you're going on a Pesach trip? How do you check your house? We'll go on that. We'll answer that tonight, B'ezrat Hashem soon. Just hold that question, okay? Also, with regards to inspecting, we don't say it's Rav Ovadia holds that it's not necessarily incumbent on us to go ahead and check all the books. Some people like to eat and snack while they read. And so, since those crumbs usually are very small, and usually we say that the liability is more so if there's 27 grams in one piece, and you're not going to find 27 grams in one piece. There's once a story that this guy, husband and wife, the husband, wasn't a learner. He wasn't really into books. He barely could listen to his own wife. So to get his attention was very hard. So one time, his wife comes home and he sees that he's sitting and reading a book for hours and hours, and she doesn't understand. Every time she's coming into the room, he's in there with the book. Leaves, comes back there with the book. She's astounded. What could possibly captivate him for so long? So she after he leaves or goes to work, whatever, the next day, she goes to his drawer, pulls out the book, opens the book, and what does she see? The whole book is empty, it's hollow, and there's just candies over there that he was snacking on. So if you have a book like that, then maybe you would have to check that for chametz. But a normal book that doesn't have any, I guess, pockets full of snacks, then you don't have to go ahead and you don't have to check, because we just say those crumbs are so small, and when you do the bitul, when you do the nullification anyway, those would be included under that nullification. So that's going to be the procedure is that whatever you're going to keep with regards to eating the chametz, because this year we can continue eating to the chametz the next day, at least for we'll see less than half the day. And so what you want to do is when you're doing the b'dika, you want to contain whatever chametz you have and put it to the side. At that point, also we haven't sold the chametz, and we'll talk about that later also. That there's going to be places where you shouldn't touch at a certain part of the day, because the rabbi will sell the chametz. And I'll send that link. I just got that link today. They sent it out in Dallas, so I'll be sending that out. And so they tell you what time at that point, you can no longer touch the chametz. It might be even at the time when you still can eat chametz, but at that point when they sell the chametz, it's not yours anymore. You're not allowed to touch it. So whatever you want to eat for that day, it's recommended to keep it on the side, not part of that chametz that you're going to be selling, and also not scattered around the house because you just did a b'dika, you just did the search. You want to make sure that it's not going anywhere. You want to keep it relatively higher up so little children can't reach it. And everything else, if it's not being sold and it's not you don't want it, it should be burnt. And so that's going to be the mitzvah of the day on the 14th of Nisan, which is going to be the this year, Wednesday, April 1st. If I'm not mistaken. On that day, we are going to go ahead and burn and destroy any of the chametz that is left. Now, you can go ahead and do it yourself. You can make a bonfire. Usually they have a bonfire at shul, at the synagogues, and they have a contained fire that you can come and throw your leftover chametz. And it's you don't have to burn it up. If you have like an ocean or a lake, you can go throw it in the lake or the ocean. The idea is that no one is able to get it, and no one is going to benefit from those pieces of bread. After you eat your last meal of chametz of the day, you want to make sure you brush your teeth, you floss, and you want to make sure that there's no traces of chametz in your mouth. Okay, and so you don't want chas v'shalom to later on have swallowed chametz, even though it was in your mouth, and it just happened to be, stuck there. No, we don't say that. You have to make sure that all of the crevices in your teeth are properly cleaned. And therefore, we have no worries of any of this chametz coming into one's mouth during Pesach. We mentioned, I think last time, that after the night, after you have done the search, you have a bitul. You have a text that you read, and there you nullify any of the chametz. I'll send that out also. And over there it says, any leavened food or leavening in my possession that I have not seen and not destroyed is hereby considered null and like dust on the ground. And one should read that in a text that he understands. So don't try to read it usually it's actually in Aramaic. So if someone doesn't understand Aramaic, probably do it in Hebrew. If someone doesn't understand Hebrew, do it in English. If someone doesn't understand English, do it in Spanish, any other language. But make sure that you understand it, because if you're saying words that you don't understand, then it doesn't really mean anything. And so you should go ahead and make sure you say it in a language that you understand. And the custom is to say it 3 times. So you say that word, that sentence 3 times. And it's recommended that in at least one of the repetitions, you should say at the end, it should be considered null and ownerless. Not necessarily, but it's not necessary, but that's a good thing to do. Now that's with regards to the night. Right after the night b'dika, right after the night search, you want to go ahead and do that nullification. Now, again, we're going to do another nullification during the day. So after you burn your chametz, we're going to have a second time that we're going to nullify it. Over here, again, we're going to say any leavened food or leavening in my possession, whether or not I have seen it, whether or not I have destroyed it, should be considered null and like dust of the ground. And at that point, you should have no chametz in your house, unless it's being sold, of course. But at that point, after the burning, you want to make sure that no chametz is in your possession. It's not in your possession, right? Anything that's sold is not yours anymore. And at that point, you're good to go. You want to make sure that you're saying this nullification, this bitul, after all of the bread has been burnt. If you've burnt any bread, you want to make sure that it's burnt, and then you say the nullification. You don't want to say the nullification before it burnt, because technically it's still being burnt. It's still there, so it's still not necessarily dust yet. So you want to make sure that you do it only after it's completely burnt. Men and women are both obligated in this mitzvah. Usually the men are the agent for the woman. So a husband is usually an agent for the wife, and so she doesn't have to worry about it. The man will do it. But if a woman lives alone, then she does have that obligation on her to go ahead and destroy, go ahead and search, and make sure that all of that chametz is rid in one's possession. If for some reason one is away from his house and he didn't have a chance to do the bitul that day in the daytime, he should go ahead and do it. That way, he at least, even let's say he didn't get to burn his chametz, so we'll see what happens afterwards. But at least you were mevatel, you nullified all of that chametz in your house. If for whatever reason, let's say the man was at work and he forgot, and then the wife realizes, well, we said the man is usually the agent for the wife, but the wife can also be the agent for him. And so if he forgets or if he's not able to, she can go ahead and nullify it on their behalf. If one forgot to do the search on the 14th at night, well, he still has to do it that day. So if he forgot it to do it that night, then he has to do it that day. And he must do it he must do so with the with the same kind of process with a light, with a candle. And he should do it with a blessing. So you want to make sure you're doing it on the day with a blessing. If someone messed up their dates and they accidentally did it on the day before, then they don't have to do another bdika on the 14th. If they already did one on the 13th at night, let's say on the 30th, on March 30th, they did March 30th at night, they did it accidentally. You do not have to go ahead and do another search on the 31st, given that you had no chametz wandering around in your house. If you did, then you would have to go ahead and search again. Even if someone forgot the whole of Pesach to do the search, he still has to go ahead and do that search, this time without a bracha, without a blessing. And even during the Pesach itself, and Kol HaMoed, if someone forgot, he would have to go ahead and search again without a bracha, without a blessing. So there is a mitzvah that you have to go ahead and search, make sure that all of the house has been rid of chametz. Now the question about traveling away, right? So you already are incumbent to have to search your house within 30 days of Pesach. So within 30 days of Pesach, basically from Purim, if you were living in your house from Purim, and you know that you're not going to leave your house for the whole of Pesach, nonetheless, you still have an obligation to do the b'dika. You do have to search your house to make sure that there's no crumbs or no pieces of chametz anywhere in the nooks and crannies of your house. So you would have to do a b'dika. Of course, you would do so without a bracha, without a blessing before you leave. And that would be the night before you leave on whatever excursion, whatever trip you're going on. Depending on where you are, you would have to go do another search on the 14th at night, that time with a blessing. So if you're staying in a hotel, in an Airbnb, whatever it may be, you would have to do a special search in that place that you're in. Now, if you're staying at a in-laws or you're staying at a family friend or whatever it may be, and the householder, the head of the household, he's doing the search, then you don't have to worry. He does the search for you. Maybe they'll let you search your room. You can go ahead and search your room if you want. But since he is the head of the household, he will be the one saying the blessing. And so you want to make sure also before you leave on any trip, you want to make sure that you don't want to leave without selling the chametz. You still want to be able to sell the chametz, put the chametz in one room, in one spot, and then you can sell the chametz. At that point, you don't have to worry, but you would have to worry about any of the remnants, any of the other crumbs and stuff that are scattered about. So you want to make sure at least that you do a b'dika, you do a search before you leave on any of those trips. If someone is, sometimes those Pesach programs or the Pesach trips, the actual resort or whatever it may be, doesn't open up until Pesach day. So you might have to fly in, and then you stay in a hotel one night. That one night is the night of the search, right? So if someone entered a room for just one evening, just the evening of the 14th of Nisan, but then the next day he's going to go to the actual resort, go to the actual hotel of where they're spending Pesach, there is a basis to be lenient and not conduct a search at all in the hotel room. You would need to do a search, though, in the next room or the next hotel or whatever you're going to be staying at, again, as long as it's not someone else's house. If no one was there to do so, and you would want to make sure that you do the search over there. And if it was, if of course over here in America there's no Torah observant hotel owners, but if there was, you would have to check to make sure that he searched the room, and if not, you would go ahead and search the room, and you would go ahead and you would have to make a blessing over it, just as someone who forgot to do the search at night. In the day, you would have to go ahead and search, and you would go and do so with a blessing. As we mentioned, if children took chametz into the house, and after you searched, well, you're going to have to go search again, especially if he comes out without the chametz in his hand, and he suddenly loses it, all right? You would have to go make sure that there's no crumbs, especially since we know that on Pesach, we are so stringent with chametz. If on chametz, we're very stringent to the point where we're not even allowed to eat at a table with someone who's eating chametz. So if someone's eating chametz and you're, Torah observant Jew, you're eating matzah, you shouldn't sit at the same table as someone who's eating chametz. If it's a non-Jewish colleague, just tell them, today I can't eat lunch with you. You have to go sit somewhere else. Even if they're separated by 2 tablecloths or 2 placemats, which is the general rule with meat and milk. Usually with meat and milk, you're allowed to sit at a singular table as long as there's some kind of recognition between the person eating meat and the person eating milk. Nonetheless, on Pesach, since we are generally accustomed to eating chametz, there's nothing inherently intuitive that we wouldn't go ahead and eat that chametz. Therefore, we are stringent in that, and we shouldn't eat at the same table as someone eating chametz. Now, if you have a non-Jewish worker that comes to your house to do work or whatever, and they bring a sandwich, right, on Pesach, well, you don't have to kick him out. You don't have to start yelling at him. Why did he bring chametz to my house? It's Pesach. How didn't you know? No, he can eat it wherever he is. Because at the end of the day, it's not your food, and it's not an issue of seeing chametz as long as it's not your chametz. Your chametz you can't see, but if it's someone else's chametz, you can see. Just of course, you wouldn't be able to eat lunch with him. I don't know if you were planning to eat lunch with the worker at your house, but don't do that. Okay. Now, with regards to mixtures containing chametz, the general rule is that on Pesach, if any piece of chametz enters any non-chametz, it's chametz, and you're not allowed to eat it on Pesach. That's the rule. Even if, for example, that it's you're talking about like a large vat. Let's say it's over 1,000 times the chametz that fell into it, it would still be forbidden. Now, if someone places leavening into dough and it became leavened on Pesach, then he's liable for creating chametz on Pesach, and he would be liable for lashes if there was a beit din, if there was a court nowadays. Now, if a food that is chametz was gotten to the point where it was rotten or moldy, and that even dogs wouldn't eat it, then and this happened before it became Pesach, meaning before it's forbidden to eat chametz on the 14th of Nisan, then it's permissible to keep it, as long as it's completely inedible by the time that Pesach starts, or that you're not allowed to eat chametz anymore. Now, you might be wondering, why would I keep such rotten or moldy products? Well, they're actually more common than you think. For example, ink made with barley-based beer, or denatured alcohol as fuel for a heater, for a portable cooker, or for a heater. All of these items, they're not edible even by a dog, and therefore there's no issue with keeping them over Pesach. Similarly, shoe polish, if it has any chametz ingredients, it's forbidden. It's permitted to keep, because even a dog wouldn't eat it. Similarly, book bindings, sometimes the paste that it's used has chametz in it. And so nonetheless, even though it has chametz, it's gotten to the point where it's inedible. And so therefore, as long as that's done before Pesach, which usually it is, then it is permissible to keep. Similarly, cigarettes. Sometimes the paper that or the glue that's used to hold them is made from chametz-based material. But since that chametz is no longer edible, then it is permissible, and the one who needs to smoke cigarettes can smoke cigarettes. Of course, we should all try not to smoke cigarettes, since that's detrimental for our health. But if someone, for some reason, needs it, then he's allowed to on Pesach. Now, we mentioned that the day before Pesach, it's interesting, the day before Pesach, we already start these restrictions. So even though Pesach usually only starts at night, the prohibition from eating chametz actually starts the day itself. And so on the 14th of Nisan, which I think is April 1st, right? April Fools. So you want to make sure that you stop eating chametz. It's going to be 2 hours. 2 halachic hours before midday. So midday, I checked in Dallas, is around 1:31 p.m. So 2 halachic hours before that is going to be around 11:01 a.m. here in Dallas. So you want to make sure that you stop eating chametz. You want to make sure not only that you stop eating, that you brushed your teeth, you flossed, and made sure that all of the chametz is out of your possession, not necessarily out of your possession, but out of your mouth and out of your kids' mouths by 11 a.m. Now, we still are able to benefit from any chametz, meaning we can sell chametz to a non-Jew, give it to animals to eat for 1 more halachic hour. So we're going to be here at 12:15 p.m. And so at 12:15 p.m., at that point, you're no longer allowed to benefit from chametz. So that means at 12:15 you should have already burnt all your chametz, and you should have done the nullification of the chametz. And so at that point, for all intents and purposes, it's Pesach. And so that means although we can still use electricity, we can still function and without all of the restrictions of Pesach. Nonetheless, at that point, chametz is chametz. That means no eating bread, no eating any of the chametz products. And at that point, you should only be eating your Pesach diet. Now we'll see later on that Pesach diet, at least the day of, should not include matzah. Right, the one staple of Pesach, you're actually not allowed to eat it on the 14th of Nisan, and we'll see that later on, because you want to come to the Seder with a desire to eat, to taste from the matzah. And generally, people will start filling up on matzah the day before, and then they're like, oh, this thing again? I just had the whole day matzah. What else is there to eat? And so we want to make sure that they are looking forward to eating the matzah at the Seder. So, if one want to make sure that we have destroyed all of the chametz beforehand, and so again, the custom is to incinerate it, to burn it. But if you want, you can also throw it into a lake or a sea. Make sure that it's crumbed into tiny particles before you throw it. Don't throw a piece of bread, a whole loaf of bread into the sea. Make sure you at least you break it up a little bit more. If someone wants to, it's permissible to throw it out into their yards for the birds to eat. Of course, you want to make sure to do this before the time of before it's forbidden to benefit from chametz. Again, before that 12:15 here in Dallas time. If you shouldn't go ahead and throw the bread in the garbage, not only because it's not honorable for the bread, but also because you never know who can come in and eat it, and so a Jew might come or eat it, and so you want to make sure that it's destroyed if you're going to put it into a garbage, all right, you want to make sure you put like some kind of bleach on it so that it becomes completely inedible. Put it in a packet, or maybe 2 packets, tie it up, and then throw it into the garbage. That way, it's completely inedible. And then, of course, we said you have to again make sure you do the nullification of the chametz that day. If someone, for some reason, found chametz on Pesach, don't know what happened. He thought he got the whole place cleared, and then he didn't realize that his 4-year-old loves to hide things not only in their room but also in their pajamas. And so they come out with the next day and they bring out a loaf of bread, and then you scream at them, "What are you doing?" All right. So if it's on Pesach itself, then that piece of bread has a law of muktzeh, and you're not allowed to move it. And so what would you do? You'd have to cover it and leave it until the end of Pesach, until the end of the holiday, and then you would have to go ahead and either burn it or throw it into the lake, sea, whatever it may be. You have to destroy it immediately, right after the holiday. If it was during the Chol HaMoed and any of those intermediary days, then you can just go ahead immediately when you find it, burn it, take it out of the house, burn it, and you want to make sure that that's done. For us who live out here and in outside of Israel, where we have 2 days, so either if you found it on the first day or second day, it has to be covered and left until the second night. At that point, you uncover it and go burn it immediately. If someone finds chametz out in the street on any day of the festival of Pesach, it is forbidden to pick it up, even if one wants to go ahead and throw it in the garbage, because our sages forbade him to pick it up because he might go ahead and eat it. And you might think, no one's going to eat a chametz off the street, but that's what our sages said, and we have to take what our sages said as law. And therefore, if someone sees chametz on the sidewalk or whatever, and they pick it up, you shouldn't pick it up, right? Don't pick it up. Make sure you don't pick it up. It's forbidden to pick it up. At that point, there's some say that you would have acquired it. Okay, now going more into some of the food mixtures of chametz. Now we mentioned that in general there's sometimes we have ratios when we're talking about nullification. For example, with meat and milk, if there's a 60-to-1 ratio, whether it's meat or milk or in meat, we consider that nullified, and it's nullified by the majority. So if a drop of milk falls into a pot of chicken soup, then we say there's probably 60 times the chicken soup corresponding to that 1 drop of milk, and therefore there's no issue to go ahead and eat that chicken soup. Now that's not the case on Pesach. If I have a pot of chicken soup that is kosher for Pesach, and then a drop of chametz falls into that chicken soup on Pesach, I have to throw all the chicken soup away. Even 1 in 1,000 is considered forbidden. It would be considered chametz, and you would have to go ahead and throw it away. It is completely forbidden. Now, this is as long as it is a mixture that is done on Pesach itself. So if this happened on Pesach itself, I had that chametz that fell into that 60 times more pot of chicken soup, then I say it's forbidden. Now, if the mixture took place before sunset of the 14th, before chametz is nullified, before chametz is forbidden, then we assume we're allowed to. All the poskim say that it is nullified in that 60-to-1 ratio. So that means any food that you're basically making before Pesach, in preparation for Pesach, then if anything were to happen and there's a 60-to-1 ratio, it is nullified. We'll see in a second that nullification happens only if it's not significant. Meaning, if that 1 drop of chametz was a coagulant or some spice that is supposed to give it the taste that you need, even though there's going to be another 60 corresponding to it, maybe in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really affect that food itself. but because it's significant, it's a significant ingredient in whatever it's made. Even if there's a 60-to-1 ratio before Pesach, we say that it is forbidden. So the general rule is that we want to make sure that all of the chametz stays away from the kosher for Passover food. But sometimes it happens that, especially when you're cooking beforehand, that it could happen that a piece of chametz falls into something that is of 60 times greater. Sephardic Jews say that's not an issue. We say that we don't assume that piece of kernel of wheat is going to reawaken and become chametz on Pesach itself. And so maybe the soup wasn't a great example, but maybe a kernel of wheat falling into rice, cooked rice, right? We don't assume that wheat kernel, if it gets hit with water on Pesach itself, is going to turn into chametz. So you can go ahead and eat it. Ashkenazim are a little bit stricter on that, and so they would say that it is forbidden. Now that's with regards to solid foods. If it's a liquid, for example, beer, right? A beer which is chametz, a drop of beer fell into, chicken soup, right? We're using the chicken soup example. Then over there, again, as long as it's before Pesach, then as long as it is 60-to-1, then we say that it's fine, again, before Pesach. Even Ashkenazic Jews say that is fine because it is a liquid. Now, Sephardic Jews, we say that, let's say that a full bottle of beer fell into the chicken soup, right? And this has happened before, right? Of course, you don't want that beer. That wasn't your intention. It was as accidental, right? And now you don't want to get rid of all that. And it's like, let's say you're on the cusp. It's like 58-to-1 ratio. So, according to the Chazon Avadia, you are allowed to go ahead and add more chicken soup to it to nullify it. So let's say it's at that 58-to-1 ratio. Now you can add more chicken soup to get it to that 60-to-1 ratio to nullify. Again, this is happening before Pesach. Our sages ruled that any mixture of chametz that occurs on Pesach, we said is forbidden, and that applies to things that are definitely chametz. So as long as that piece of chametz is definitely chametz, then if it becomes mixed on Pesach, then it's forbidden. If a product that might or might not be chametz gets mixed in a food on Pesach, it is considered null, of course, if there's a 60-to-1 ratio of ingredients. For this reason, there's a leniency in eating the machine-made matzahs. The machine-made matzahs, Yehuda and all of those square matzahs, everyone always thinks that those are the most kosher thing you can have for Pesach. There's actually might be a problem with them, and because of the amount of machines and of the amount of processes that they go ahead and do, that what happens is that some of the tiny crumbs of the matzah of the chametz becomes mixed in with it, because it's a complete process, and I don't know how many times, we said 18 minutes is the time when water touches flour, it becomes chametz. You have 18 minutes, so I don't know how many times they are cleaning these machines, and so it could happen that there is tiny crumbs of chametz that become mixed in one of 1,000 of these matzot that are manufactured. Since no one can testify that any chametz at all is in this matzah, so it's not known, right? It's a safek, it's in doubt, and so any possible chametz crumb, it becomes null, even if it does exist. And furthermore, any mixture that took place in the stage that when it is dough is halachically equivalent to liquid, and we said a liquid mixed with another liquid. Even Ashkenazic Jews hold that it would be permissible if it's nullified in the greater of 60. So therefore, for both of these reasons, both the Ashkenazic Jews and the Sephardic Jews can be lenient and eat the matzah, the machine-made matzahs. Of course, ideally, you want to, and especially we'll see later on that the night of Pesach, you want to make sure you're eating shmora matzah, special type of matzah. Shmora matzah means matzah that was guarded, and it's a more of a higher class. You'll see it's kind of more of those circular, little burnt. That's how they usually sell it nowadays. The idea being that they were manufactured with grains, wheat that was guarded, that water that which was left overnight, and they were manufactured by probably humans, not AI, not machines, and so we want that. That's the most ideal, and that would be the best way to do the mitzvah of the Seder night, and we'll talk about that later, B'ezrat Hashem. But as far as eating, we say whether it's the machine-made ones or the human-made ones, both of those are permissible on Pesach. Salted cheese or fish, the salt needs to be inspected to make sure that there's no crumbs of chametz, and without taking special care, that no chametz becomes mixed with the salt during the salting process, or with the cheese or with the fish during the salting process, may be eaten on Pesach. It is not even necessary to soak it in water or to rinse it off. We assume that of course, if everything was checked, then we're good to go. This is certainly the case for sardines and plain oil cans in Israel, for example. But of course, you want to make sure that whatever you're buying, ideally, you want to make sure that it has a kosher label on it. There are, if for example, there are, there's a, back then when they used to eat chickens, right? They would take the chickens and they would slaughter them, and inside the chicken's stomach there was grains or something. Nowadays, we're not worried about that. I don't think any chickens eat grains, eat wheat. And so, of course, you want to make sure that it says kosher for Pesach, but if it's frozen chicken or frozen meat, not minced meat or not ground, but it's a regular, just raw frozen chicken, then you're good to go. If someone discovers a whole kernel of wheat baked into a matzah, and inspects and finds that the kernel has no cracks at all, he should remove that section from the matzah, and should remove a section that's 2 centimeters that radiates around the kernel, and he can eat the rest of the matzah. It does not need to be thrown out, but the kernel and the round around the matzah should be thrown out. You don't need to burn it, and it's not necessarily considered chametz. If a non-Jew, for whatever reason, I guess he got fired that day and he was working in one of the kitchens, and so he threw chametz into a Jew's pot of food during Pesach, well, the entire pot is now forbidden, regardless of the ratio. So I guess you don't want to fire your non-Jewish cooks on Pesach. You don't want to anger them or anger them at all. The general rule is that you want to make sure that all of the spices can get really finicky with how they're processing. A while back, it was discovered that cumin, for example, has some oat seeds mixed in it, since the two crops were traditionally grown next to each other. So something like that, you don't think cumin. How can cumin possibly have chametz in it? So you want to make sure again that you're buying a lot of these items, especially food-wise, with kosher for Passover labels. If not, you can always check those lists. There's so many lists out there nowadays. They have even like a Costco list that tells you exactly which foods you can go to Costco and buy, even if it doesn't have a kosher for Passover symbol on them. And so the idea is to follow the guidelines that have been given to us by the CRC, the OU, and with that, you know that you're going to be good to go. Don't rely on your own knowledge. In Israel, they found a couple of years back that the baby carrots they were putting some kind of coating on them that was made out of wheat. So that was also chametz. And so even baby carrots, you can imagine that you would never have thought of it. Nonetheless, we want to make sure that we want to have to make sure we have a kosher for Passover, kosher holiday, and therefore we want to make sure that you're following all those guidelines. If for whatever reason the flavor detracts the food's quality, then we say that it's fine. So if someone, for example, mistakenly cooked food during Pesach in a pot that has been used all year long for chametz, it got mixed up, but more than 24 hours has passed. At that point, when we say 24 hours, that's the time that we say food rottens and it gives a bad taste to whatever it's being cooked in. And so if someone used this chametz pot, but the chametz pot hasn't been used in 24 hours, since the last time the chametz has been cooked in the pot, that food may be eaten during Pesach. So, for example, I make, I guess, chicken soup, right? I take my chicken soup, and I'm going to make chicken soup on Pesach, and I got all mixed up, and I accidentally took my non-kosher for Pesach chicken soup. You say, what's the problem with chicken soup? Well, I had sometimes, those matzah balls, but matzah balls not on Pesach sometimes have wheat in it. And so I had my wheat balls, right, that were in it. So it's a non-kosher for kosher, not kosher for Pesach pot. And thankfully, it's been 24 hours since I cooked anything in that pot. And so now we say that whatever flavor was in those walls of the pot now give a bad taste. This is called in Hebrew noten ta'am lifgam. And it gives it detracts from the taste of whatever it's going to give over. And therefore, we say that it is permissible now for me to, of course, on accident. I can't go ahead and purposefully do this. We're talking about in a case where it was accidental. I can go ahead and eat that on Pesach. Of course, if you're Sephardic. If you're an Ashkenazi, then they have the custom of forbidding the food, even if it has an adverse flavor. So in that case, I guess if it's the chicken noodle soup or whatever, then the Ashkenazim would not be able to eat from that soup. Cosmetics, right? It's permissible to use cosmetics on Pesach, even if their ingredients include chametz byproducts. So I don't know if a lipstick or lip gloss, or let's say these kinds of cosmetics, I guess a blush or whatever, right? Sometimes it could happen that it gets into your mouth, but since these things are not edible by a dog, then it is permissible on Pesach. Similarly, pain pills, any medication that someone needs to take, if it doesn't have any taste, sometimes like those Advil. I don't know. I didn't check the list, but sometimes Advil has a taste. Right, so you have to make sure that at least that is kosher for Passover. But any pain medicine or medicine that doesn't have any taste, then it's fine. If someone has a dangerous condition where he needs to take the medicine, and it could be even if the medicine contains some chametz in it, you're allowed to, because again, this is in fact you shouldn't even consider not taking it because it's life-threatening, and you should go ahead and eat it and take it. Other items that they try to sell you to that kosher for Passover, even though you don't need, is of course you don't need any shampoos or conditioners or body washes that are kosher for Passover, even though you might see it in the stores. They don't need to be, okay? And technically, it's permissible to use any inedible cleaning agent to wash your dishes. It doesn't have to have a special certification for Pesach, even though nowadays there are brands that do have such a certification, and it's advisable to use those products. Nonetheless, if you don't want to spend $14 or an extra, they upcharge you 50%, mark it up like 150%. Then you, or if there's no such cleaning agent in your area, then one may use any inedible agent, any inedible soap, and scrubs for cleaning dishes for those purposes. Again, those are inedible by a dog, and so at that point you're not worried about that. You want to make sure that any chametz that is kept over Pesach, you don't want to keep any chametz over Pesach unless you sold it. Okay, and if one does chas v'shalom, then it's forbidden to eat from that food, and it's forbidden to benefit from that chametz. Some poskim rule that if chametz has a pleasant fragrance, and such a food was kept over Shabbat, maybe he had like cinnamon buns, right? Then he starts warming them up in the oven after Shabbat and after Pesach, then it's forbidden to smell those fragrances. And so you want to make sure that the main idea is don't keep any chametz over Pesach unless you completely sold it to a non-Jew. You had an agency to sell it. At that point, it's good to go, and you can go ahead and benefit from it. And with that segue, we can talk about selling the chametz, right? So the universal custom is to go ahead and sell the chametz to a non-Jew. So what do? We don't go ahead. You shouldn't go ahead and do it. You shouldn't go ahead and ask your neighbor to sell it. There's a lot of different intricate concepts, and they usually form a contract. So you want to make sure that you generally sell to a authoritative rabbi, the rabbi of your community. They have a certain lists or emails that you can send it to, and websites nowadays even, and you do it that way. There was once a rabbi in Israel. He found a non-Jew in the area, and he told him the whole process, sold him all the chametz of all of his town, and everyone was good to go. In the middle of Pesach, this non-Jew comes with 2 trucks and starts taking all the chametz from all of the homes. And all the people are like, well, can he do that? And the rabbi said, yeah, technically we sold it to him. And so technically, if any Jew comes into your house, you have to give the chametz it's his, right? And so what happened? This guy, this non-Jew, took all of the chametz and ran. Never saw him again. And so that's why you want to make sure that you're doing it through a respected halachic authority, and you shouldn't go ahead and do it yourself. You never know what can happen. So usually the rabbi of the community, he goes ahead and he does it for you, and at that point you don't have to worry about it. Now, what you should do is you should go ahead and try to minimize the amount of chametz and store it in one central place. And then you mark it off as chametz. You put a sign on it that says sold, says leavened, says chametz, whatever it may be. You should try to tape it shut because you don't want to accidentally open it. Sometimes out of just routine, you open those things, and you're good to go. When you're making sure to sell, make sure that you're selling the chametz. All right, you don't want to be selling your whole house because you can sell accidentally your utensils, and if you sell your utensils, then when you buy it back, you have to tovel them. You have to re-immerse them in the mikvah, and that might take a couple hours, if not days. So you want to make sure that you're some of these lists, they tell you exactly where to put it, and they say, my chametz is in the drawer in my house, and so that's the best thing to do is kind of reference where you put it. But that's not necessary. You can just sell the chametz in your house, and so you want to make sure that again, when you're selling it, you're mentioning the chametz in your house and not your house. All right, you don't want to sell the utensils. The rabbi will usually, you have to appoint him as the agent, or you have to do some kind of appointing as an agent. And so usually the rabbi will tell you to lift up a pen or some kind of a method of establishing him as your agent. At that point, he's your agent for all intents and purposes, and he can sell your chametz for you. With regards to selling, you have to again make sure that when it's sold, you can't take it, and you can only use it again when it's bought back. Okay, And so if someone is selling in a different time zone, you want to make sure that the selling and the buying back are done such that those are within your parameters, your time zones. And so, like what we said here, that chametz is in Dallas, for example, should be is forbidden by 12:15, right? So that means that if I'm going to go sell it to someone in the East Coast, right, or on the West Coast, right, I make sure that they have sold it before 12:15. Now they can buy it back. You want to make sure that they buy it back after, right, after the time that you have finished your Pesach, and it could be that if you do it on the West Coast, then you have to wait a little bit more hours. But you cannot eat that chametz until they buy it back. Now, when we're again, we have to make sure that we're doing it with a full heart. We have to take this as a true thing, even though it seems kind of like a loophole of keeping your chametz. We have to recognize that it is a custom that has been given down since the times of the sages, of the Tanaim, the Gemara, and it's known that this was the method of keeping of the chametz. So when we go ahead and we do it, we do so with an open mind and an open heart, and that whatever we're selling, we are selling. It's not like we're just putting it to the side until can't touch it, can't eat it. It's for all intents and purposes not yours. Okay. We'll put it off there for today.